Hello, fabulous Ford students. This is Mrs. March. Today we're going to begin our Unit 10 on energy and cycles. After reviewing this video, you should be able to diagram the flow of energy through living systems, including food chains, food webs, and energy pyramids. You should be able to demonstrate and explain the cycling of matter within living systems, such as in the decay of biomass in a compost bin. The vocabulary words that you will need to know will be decay, compost bin, decomposer, trophic level, biomass, nitrogen cycle, carbon cycle, water cycle, energy pyramid, tertiary consumer, and a quaternary consumer. Let's begin with some simple definitions. The autotrophs are the first at the trophic level, and they are also called producers, and they make their own food. Examples are plants, algae, and many bacteria, from the Greeks meaning self-feeding. Heterotrophs. Heterotrophs will feed on autotrophs and other heterotrophs to obtain their energy. From the Greeks, it means nourishment. You are a heterotroph. Decomposers are the organisms that break down dead organisms and return nutrients to the soil. These are our mushrooms, our worms, and our bacteria. Biomass. The definition of biomass is the weight or the total quantity of living organisms of one animal or plant species or of all the species in the community. It does include dead plants and animals, including their waste products, which becomes manure, and then it is a renewable energy source from biotic factors, and a tropical rainforest has more biomass than a desert. A compost bin. A compost bin is a container that is filled with recycled plants. Decomposers turn it into natural fertilizer, and the temperature increases as the decomposers break down this decaying organic matter. Here's a shot of the worms inside of a compost bin. Very important to a compost bin are the worms. Okay, so let's explain again what happens during decomposition itself. Organic matter is broken down by decomposers, and the nutrients are then returned to the soil. Temperature increases because heat energy is released by decomposers. Biomass is reduced during decomposition. New plants use the nutrients from the soil to grow. Animals get their nutrients they need from plants and other animals. Nutrients that are needed are the energy, nitrogen, and carbon. Let's look at the carbon cycle here. And it's a known fact that plants take in more carbon dioxide than they give off. Okay, and what would happen if more trees were planted? More CO2 would be removed from the atmosphere. In this side of the diagram, the manufacturing plant uses coal and oil to burn to make products for humans, and when it is going through the process, it's releasing its CO2 back into the atmosphere. Animals do it as well because we exhale out our CO2. It's considered a waste gas for us, as well as when they do die, they do go back into releasing their carbon into the soil. And the trees here, the plants, will trap the CO2 from the atmosphere. It will hold on to its carbon, and it will release its oxygen, allowing us to breathe. The nitrogen cycle. Where do animals get the nitrogen cycle? Even though there's 78% of nitrogen in our atmosphere, humans, man, cannot use it in the gaseous form. We must have nitrogen fixation, or we must have the bacterias on the nodules of the root systems that convert the gaseous form nitrogen into usable form inside the plant. We, of course, then eat the plant that has the nitrogen in it, and that is how we are able to use it. The water cycle you should be very familiar with. What would happen to the water cycle without the sun? Life on Earth would cease to exist. The trophic levels is called the 10% rule. Each time you go upwards on a pyramid or trophic levels, organisms lose 10% in the transfer. Okay, let's explain this again. Energy flow through living systems can be summarized by trophic levels. If this starts with the sun then of course allows the producers to make their own food. Primary consumers eat the producers. Secondary consumers eats the primary that's eaten the plants. Tertiary, the third level, okay, are consumers, and then the quaternary consumer would be man. All arrows point eventually to a decomposer. In this diagram, the sun, okay, is allowing the phytoplankton to make their own food. It's eaten by the fish is eaten by the seal is eaten by the whale, and you can see the arrows point in the direction of energy transfer. If I started with 1,000 in phytoplankton, every time I'm going up the trophic level, I'm losing 10%. The fish would receive 100, the seal 10, the whale 1% of the energy from the phytoplankton. Okay, here it is again, little bit of a different format, okay, in a stream. Oop, let me go back. Here is the algae. If this again is 1,000, then the larvae that feeds on the algae would receive only 100 from the 1,000% of algae. The trout would receive 10%, and the kingfisher 1%. Who is the quaternary consumer in this trophic level? Man. Okay, how much energy gets passed on? That's what we're really talking about in trophic levels. Okay, again, here it is in another format, but let's go in reverse. If he receives only 1, then he got only 10% from the trout, who got 100% from the larvae, who actually received 1,000 from the algae. Okay. Here's the visual again for how much energy does actually get passed on. If it starts at 100% here in the algae, only 10% is transferred to the larvae. 10% again is transferred from the larvae to the trout, from the trout to the kingfisher, and you can see it decreases as it goes up the trophic levels. The food chain. The food chain shows how chemical energy is passed from one organism to another. The arrow points in the direction the energy moves. From a producer to a primary consumer, the mouse, to a secondary consumer, the snake, to a tertiary consumer, the hawk, and eventually quaternary is man. Texas Food Web. Let's take a look at this. Which one of these are producers? If you said leaves, algae, and sunflower, you're correct. Which of these are primary consumers? Cricket, rabbit, butterfly, fish, beetle. Which of these are secondary consumers? Frog, snake, alligator, crawfish, bird. Which of these are tertiary consumers? Okay, your snake and your alligator. Who would a quaternary consumer be? Man. What trophic level has the greatest amount of energy available? Okay. If you said producers, you were correct. Let's look at it again. Producers have the greatest energy, greatest amount of energy. As we go up the trophic level, we lose 10%. Okay, I hope you are comfortable and understand a little bit more about energy and cycles. I will see you in class.